Hello, my name is Kay Stepkin and I'm the founder of the Vegan Museum. Today's event is being sponsored by the Salient Lifestyle Center, which is part of the Seventh-day Adventist Fellowship in Elgin, Illinois, where our museum is presently located. The Vegan Museum was created to address the grave health, environmental, and ethical crises that we are facing today. Eating a whole grain vegan diet is one of the most significant factors that can lead us back toward health and harmony. Our speaker, Dr. Rao, is one of the few leaders of our movement, both insightful and brave enough to sound the alarm and also to offer ideas on how we can build sustainability using the knowledge that we have already accumulated. The urgency of our situation prompted him to found the not-for-profit Climate Healers that aims to help heal our planet. He is also the author of 2 books and the executive producer of documentaries that include Cowspiracy and What the Health. Dr. Rao.
So this talk is about the foundations of sustainability. What is it? What are the foundations of sustainability? And are we really dealing with sustainability honestly at the moment? And Bertrand Russell said over 100 years ago, almost 100 years ago, that the greatest challenge to any thinker is to state the problem in a way that will allow a solution. So really how we formulate the problem helps us figure out what the right solution would be. And if we look at the problem today around the world, there are lots of things going on. I want to just start quoting you some statistics from the World Wildlife Fund Living Planet reports. So the World Wildlife Fund Living Planet report of 2014 stated that between 1970 and 2010, 52% of all wild vertebrates disappeared. So this is a comprehensive survey of over 3,500 vertebrate species, land animals, birds, freshwater fish, saltwater fish, they're all included in this survey. So the overall average is that 52% of their total biomass disappeared between 1970 and 2010 in 40 years. And at that point, I did an extrapolation to see when will they reach 100%, and I came up with the number 2026. Okay, now that my calculations were fairly simplistic, so I thought I would wait until the next Living Planet report to see whether I'm correct or not. And the next Living Planet report came out in 2016. They issue it every 2 years, and they usually are 4 years behind. So the 2014 Living Planet report looked at data until 2010. And the Living Planet report of 2016 looked at data until 2012. And it said that 58% of wild animals died off between 1970 and 2012. So we lost another 6% in just 2 years. So if you just do a linear extrapolation at that point, you'll get to 2026. Okay. Now, later in 2020, the latest one came out in September of last year. And it said that between 1970 and 2016, 68% died off. Now, 2016 was when President Trump got elected and the Trump era began. And so you can guess whether wild animals were killed at a faster rate or we slowed it down between 2016 and 2021. Yeah, so this is also the time when Bolsonaro became president in Brazil. So we are in a very dire situation. I say we only have 5 years left to turn this around. So I see this as the equivalent of, when you're 5 seconds from hitting a wall and you're driving a car at 90 miles an hour and you turn a corner and you see this concrete wall in front of you on the road. Would you say, I love to drive my car fast and I won't take my foot off the accelerator? Or would you apply brakes? What if your children and grandchildren are in the back seat? Would your decision be any different? So I say, what would an intelligent species do? given this situation. And the most obvious thing you need to do is to take your foot off the accelerator and put it on the brake. And what does that really mean in terms of what's happening to wild animals? So a complete global transformation of civilization is absolutely inevitable. Okay? And so I say that it doesn't matter if our leaders are all playing golf and the world is on fire behind them. Whether they like it or not, things are going to change. There was a paper in January of 2021, just a few months ago, written by a lot of scientists who basically said that we are underestimating the challenges of avoiding a ghastly future. Our leaders are not being serious yet. Okay? And it requires a transformative change, and they are not yet talking about that. So, and it's mainly driven by biodiversity loss. So this is why pervasive human-driven decline of life on Earth points to the need for transformative change was the title of a paper that came out in 2019. So we are going to see a transformative change. It's inevitable. The question is, do we do it voluntarily or do we let nature force it on us? We have a lot of stories that are absolutely false and that we have bought into. Our civilization is built on these stories. The story of endless growth, that we can keep growing the economy forever and ever. And what I'm showing here is projections from 1970 from the limits to growth. It was based on an MIT model, and which basically showed that we are going to hit peak. So peak of industrial output by the middle of this decade, and peak of food per capita and peak of services per capita around that time. So 2025 is when we are going to really hit the end of this growth phenomena. Okay? And it says that by 2030, human population will start declining. Now, this is assuming that we keep at it. We keep doing the same thing over and over, regardless of the signal that's being sent to us by nature. So that's when this sort of thing will happen. So that's what the model was assuming, that we are going to keep doing what we are doing. And we have been assuming that technology will lead us out of this mess. And technology in the form of faster and faster computation, Moore's law. But unfortunately for us, Moore's law is already saturated in a number of ways. So the clock speed on chips has saturated, the power that you can put on a chip has saturated, the performance per clock has saturated. The only thing that keeps going up now so far is the number of transistors on the chip. And basically, the extra transistors that we are putting on the chip are all dark transistors, meaning they shouldn't be all on at the same time. If they're all on at the same time, they will just they'll go over the power budget and they will start melting. So we have software that drives this chip that makes sure that these blocks are not all on at the same time. And even this is going to saturate within the next couple of years. So DARPA has already said that. And they don't see any other new technology in the horizon that would allow us to continue on our current path. So fundamentally, we have been running an ecological Ponzi scheme, a global ecological Ponzi scheme. That's what our economy really is. It's about liquidating nature and then turning that into capital that then you distribute as short-term income to the people at the top. That's what's been going on. So our growth formula now is to just blindly monetize everything so that when dead trees have more economic value than living trees, we bulldoze all the trees. When dead animals have more economic value than living animals, we slaughter all the animals. And when sick people have more economic value than healthy people, we sicken people. So our economic system then endangers life on Earth through biological annihilation, climate change, and pandemics. It addicts everyone into compulsive behaviors. That's how corporations grow their revenues. It lies to us. It lies to us about the root cause of pandemics, about the protein myth, about the calcium myth, you name it. There are so many lies that we're told, even in textbooks, just to foster the economic growth. And finally, it steals from the poor to enrich the rich. And so I'm showing you here, I went to a supermarket and I bought organic basmati rice for $2 a pound. And then I went to India and found out that the woman who grew the rice only got 5 cents a pound for that rice. So we really literally stole from her to enrich some traders. So this is the ecological Ponzi scheme that we've been running. And the trouble with Ponzi schemes is that they always collapse. And they also depend on growth to continue growing. And so this Ponzi scheme is based on two false axioms. What I call axioms are things that we assume are true, but they happen to be false. The first axiom is the axiom of consumerism, which is that the pursuit of happiness is best accomplished by stoking and satisfying a never-ending series of latent desires in human beings. This is why we see 3,500 ads being bombarded to us every day. This is what I call the greed is good rule, which is, we know it's not true, but we have bought into it. We are pretending it's true. This is the false axiom of consumerism that's driving the economic system. Second is the false axiom of supremacism, which is that life is a competitive game in which those who have gained an advantage may possess, enslave, and exploit animals, nature, and the disadvantaged for their pursuit of happiness. This is what I call the might is right rule. And the evidence of this axiom being there is in all the slaughterhouses and the factory farms around you, and in the colonialism and racism that pervades our system. So this is another axiom. So we have assumed that this is true. And then we discover that these two are really not true, which is why our economic system is failing us. So we have created two industrial machines of doom to implement these two axioms. One is the burning machine, which is basically all the fossil fuel burning and the industries that supply our consumer goods. So this is to implement the false axiom of consumerism. Okay? And the second machine that we have implemented to address the false axiom of supremacism is the killing machine, which is about animal agriculture and fishing. Now, these two machines are destroying the planet. But the way we are framing the story in the news media and in government circles is that these two machines have to keep growing. They have to keep growing because the economy has to keep growing. So the problem is not that these two machines are killing the planet. The problem is that we are not fueling these machines correctly. If you could only fuel them with solar energy, we can keep going. That's the way they're trying to frame it. Okay? So this is what I call Bertrand Russell's corollary, which is the greatest challenge to the failing system is to state the problem in a way that will not allow a solution. Because if we found a solution is to shut down these two machines, the whole system collapses. The Ponzi scheme just disappears. So the way they're framing it, if you look at the problems on the environmental problems on the planet, we are losing biodiversity left and right. In fact, this thing that's sticking out, it shows when it's red, it means that it's exceeded the ecological limits. And it's red, it's actually 100 times bigger than the diameter of this yellow circle. Okay, so that's how far it's extended. We are losing biodiversity at a factor of 100 more than we should be. And most of that is caused by the killing machine. Those are the black dots here. So you see all these other issues. Land system change, we are in the yellow zone. We're not yet red. Phosphorus and nitrogen, we are in the red zone. And that's also mostly caused by the killing machine. Freshwater use, we are in the yellow zone. And that's also mostly caused by the killing machine. Climate change, we're in the yellow zone. And you see, it is not caused by the killing machine. So this is why the way we frame our environmental problems, we try to frame it as climate change. Climate change is the main thing that they focus on. They don't focus on biodiversity loss, nitrogen and phosphorus loading, or any of these other issues. Why? Because they can frame it as it's not the killing machine, it's only the fuel for the burning machine. If you could change the fuel for the burning machine, we can continue the Ponzi scheme. So fundamentally, our governments are really like Bernie Madoff. They're really running a Ponzi scheme and they're desperately trying to figure out how to keep it going. And there are a couple of things here where you see question marks. So these are aerosol loading. Aerosol loading and novel entities really is chemical pollution of the planet. We don't even know whether we have exceeded our limits or not. Why? Because we are not even measuring them. If you come to me with an engineering problem and say, can you solve this? And I see that you haven't even measured something, I would tell you to go back and start doing that first. So we had a rule when I was working at Intel that if you don't test certain portions of your chip, you have to assume that those portions are dead. And then they'll ask you, if those portions are dead, is your chip still working? And if you say yes, they'll say, then why are those portions there? Why are those parts there? So take it out. So the corollary to that rule was that 100% of your chip had to be tested before you send it out. And if that is the way we design silicon chips, don't you think we should be doing that for our civilization? Isn't our civilization more important than a silicon chip? So I say that this is an engineering shambles, okay, what we are doing in our civilization. So our food system is even worse. It's an engineering shambles. We eat 1.6 billion tons of food. Okay, that's what's shown on the right-hand side. But to eat 1.6 billion tons of food, we are actually procuring 9 billion tons of food from the planet, from 45% of the land area of the planet. Most of that we feed to our animals. So we feed 7.27 billion tons to our animals, who then produce 0.26 billion tons that goes into this industrial processing block, and out comes 0.19 billion tons of food. So by the time it gets to our plate, it's reduced by a factor of 40. And this includes meat, dairy, eggs, all put together. Okay? So fundamentally, there is a tremendous waste that goes through the animal processing system. Now, this is just the food. In addition to the food, the animals also produce 0.14 billion tons of other substances like blood and bones and skin. I mean, it's a very grisly operation. Okay? Fundamentally, we are behaving like zombies with these animals. And so we are using their skin, we are using their body parts to do other things like our shoes, our clothing, you name it. So this is why if we want to take out this block, eliminate this block altogether, because this block is causing the most damage on the planet, then you have to go vegan. It's not just about changing our food. It's about changing everything. We need to eliminate the animal from everything we do. So if you look at the amount of food we eat, okay, so 100% if you look at the total amount of food we eat, 85% of it comes from plants already. And that 85% comes from just 6% of the land area of the planet. So less than half of the cropland output goes directly as plant food for our consumption. So we are already eating a plant-rich diet worldwide. Only 12% of our food comes from land animals. And to get that 12%, we are using up 43% of the land area of the planet, 37% of it just to graze our animals. So it's a tremendous waste. And then to get 3% of the food we eat, we are destroying the entire ocean. So if you watch the documentary Seaspiracy, you'll see how much destruction is going on in the ocean. It is an order of magnitude worse than what we're doing on land. So only 9% of the forests are left. This is why wild animal population is down by so much. The other so-called forests that we have are really literally plantations, which we use for logging and our industrial uses. And all these deserts and mountains constitute about 19%. So our cities and shopping centers, etc., is just only 1% of the land area of the planet. So we are really literally misusing the earth. Okay? We're misusing the earth, and we are pretending we need it. We need to do it. This is why, I say that animal agriculture is the leading cause of climate change. Why? Because we have cut half the trees on the planet just to create grazing land for our animals. So there were 6 trillion trees on the planet 10,000 years ago. Now there are only 3 trillion. So every tree will store about 1 ton of CO2. So do the math. 3 trillion trees would store 3 trillion tons of CO2. So if we can store 3 trillion tons of CO2 today by bringing back all the trees that we have cut, we can literally reverse climate change. It's as simple as that. This is why we say that if we take into account the opportunity cost of the land use, animal agriculture is the leading cause of climate change. So if we shut down the animal agriculture industry, if we shut down the killing machine, you will literally reduce the greenhouse gas emissions on an annual basis by 87%. So this is a paper that I wrote, and it is now being published in the Journal of Ecological Society later this month. So you will have that for your references. So sustainability to me is fundamentally, it's about morality. Truth is sustainable, lies are not. Justice is sustainable, injustice is not. Peace is sustainable, war is not. Freedom is sustainable, slavery is not. Kindness is sustainable and cruelty is not. Compassion is sustainable and violence is not. And so this is why, sustainability has to be something that the faith community has to get involved in. So we had signed this Interfaith Declaration on Climate Change back in 2011. And you see here Ila Gandhi, the granddaughter of Mahatma Gandhi, handing it to Christiana Figueres, who was the executive secretary of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. And we had all these faith leaders sign it, including Desmond Tutu. So you can see his signature here, plus Desmond. We signed it. And in that, there was one addendum that I put in, which said that while climate change is a symptom, the fever the earth has contracted, the underlying disease is the disconnection from creation that plagues human societies throughout the earth. And we, the undersigned, pledge to heal this disconnection by promoting and exemplifying compassion for all creation in all our actions. And every faith leader signed it. So they said it is completely compatible with our faith. So then I got a call from the secretary of Desmond Tutu, because Desmond Tutu, he said, was concerned that he signed it. And his concern was that, did he sign on to go vegan? Because he loves his chicken too much. So you see that disconnection that happens? Fundamentally, when we say our faith is based on compassion for all creation, how is that compatible with having a killing machine that's killing 1 to 3 trillion sea animals and 80 billion land animals every year? How is that even compatible with that? So the killing machine has to be shut down. There's no question. But how do we get people to understand that? How do we tell them, this is urgent and this needs to change right now? So I say the way it's all about framing our story. And I say the way we frame our stories, we can either say everything is fine or everything is a mess. Or we can say everything will change or nothing will change. And you can actually take what is happening today and you can frame it in any one of these 4 quadrants. And I say the right way to frame it that will inspire people to actually change is to say that everything is fine and everything will change. Because we are an intelligent species, we are going to take our foot off the accelerator and put it on the brake. So William Offiles is a systems specialist, one of my heroes, and he said, the real product of genuine systems analysis is not solutions, but wisdom. It's about understanding what is going on and to explain things in a way that makes it obvious that we have to change. Because you see, in nature, every species has a role, and every species has no choice but to be in alignment with nature. Like the elephant, when he's breaking branches of trees, the elephant is actually doing something that helps the ecosystem because he's creating openings for sunlight to stream and nourish the underbrush. So the elephant has no choice but to be in alignment with nature because nature is fundamentally an almost perfect system design. And so we have a hypothesis is that human beings are the climate regulators of planet Earth. Okay, that's our hypothesis. So what that means is that we have become so powerful that we are actually literally able to change the climate of the planet. And once you acknowledge that you're changing the climate of the planet, you automatically assume responsibility for maintaining that climate. So we are the climate regulators. We are a thermostat species or a caretaker species of planet Earth. And we have been actually doing it. If you look at the history of the Earth, over the last 3 million years, the Earth has gone through over 100 ice ages and warm periods between the ice ages. And the difference in temperature between an ice age and a warm period is about 10 degrees Celsius or nearly 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So during an ice age, life struggles to thrive because you get a mile of ice on top of Chicago. So there's nothing living there. So life has to just become constrained around the equator. So during this time, life spawned us as a species. So nature created us as a species. And she gave us control of fire 500,000 years ago. And in the the previous ice age, she gave us partnership with wolves. So when we became partners with wolves, who became our dogs, they actually lent us their sense of smell, their sense of hearing. So they made us much more powerful than we would have been otherwise. So now in the current warm period, which is on the right-hand side here, you'll see that the temperature was pretty much identical to what was happening 3 ice ages ago. Okay? Except it didn't go down. It just stayed straight, stayed flat, and it started going up. So if you look closely at what happened, you will see that the carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere and the methane levels in the atmosphere was matching what was happening 3 ice ages ago until about 6,000 years ago. And then it took off. Okay? So it took off. And this is what our ancestors did. This is the human effect. So we have been changing the climate for thousands of years, not just over the last 150 years. But the first few thousand years, what we were doing was actually good for us. Why? Because we kept the temperature constant. We kept the temperature constant for 10,000 years. And if we hadn't done that, the Earth would have gone back to another ice age 5,000 years ago. So then over the last 200 years, we discovered fossil fuels and we built all this technology. And as a result, we raised the temperature by 1 degree Celsius, 1.2 degrees Celsius. And now we are here at this decision point. And we are wondering whether to keep doing what we are doing and therefore heat up the Earth to about 4 or 5 degrees Celsius, at which point it is very likely that the Earth will go into the Venus syndrome. So what is the Venus syndrome? It means that all the carbon on Earth will just go up into the atmosphere. And if that happens, the temperature on Venus is about 450 degrees Celsius. That's the surface temperature. So nothing lives. Okay, so potentially we are on track. I mean, we're going to go extinct if we keep doing that. And possibly we'll also create the Venus syndrome on Earth. So wipe out everything. Or we could bring back the trees that we cut. We could all go vegan within the next 5 years, bring back the trees that we cut, and then we and all life could thrive again. And we can become the thermostat species of the planet, the caretaker species of the planet. And we could then hand the controls over to our children and say, this is your job to make sure that the Earth does not go back to another ice age. So that's the decision point we are at, okay? Either to the left or to the right. And I think it makes absolutely no sense to choose the left side. So that's like saying I'm going to keep my foot on the accelerator because I like to drive my car fast. So this is the metamorphosis analogy that I've been using. So we have been in the caterpillar phase, and now we have to decide whether to become a butterfly or not. And COVID-19 is literally putting us in the chrysalis phase for humanity. Okay, it's the birthing of the chrysalis phase for humanity, because it's nature, Mother Nature, sending us to our rooms to think about what we have done and decide what we want to become when we come out of our timeout. So I see 2020 as zero VW, which is vegan world. That's year zero of vegan world. And we have to build the vegan world with the correct axioms. The true axiom of inner peace, which is that the pursuit of happiness is best accomplished by seeking it within ourselves. This is what I call the self-mastery rule. And the second is the true axiom of homo ahimsa, which is that all life is one family, where we each bring our unique skills to give all we can, receive all we need, and become all we are, which is the vitality code rule of Dr. Shelley Ostroff. So if you build our civilization on correct axioms, then it is sustainable. And you do this not by trying to fight the old system, but to build something new from scratch. Because the old system is based on false axioms. You can never fix it by tweaking laws. So Buckminster Fuller said that. He said, you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing model obsolete. And so this is the greatest transformation in human history. And we are part of it. We have been called to do it. And we have to change our stories from normalized violence to normal nonviolence. We have to change our games from competitive finite games to collaborative infinite games. And we have to change our rituals and our festivals from the rituals of a predator species to the rituals of a caretaker species. And we have to stop calling ourselves Homo sapiens sapiens, which is the wise hominid. And I mean, clearly, when we haven't even taken our foot off the accelerator yet, we're not that smart at the moment. And I've never met a truly wise person going around saying I'm wise, and that too twice. So this is a very narcissistic term to call ourselves, because we are the ones who are naming each other, right? And so I'd rather that we call ourselves Homo ahimsa, which is a combination of a Latin word and a Sanskrit word, which signifies that we are coming together as a species from around the world, and it defines our character, not our characteristic. So those are the cultural shifts that need to happen, and the civilizational shifts are from speciesism, colonialism, racism, ableism, and patriarchy, the domination oppression paradigm, to a veganism and radical sacredness, so the ahimsa and sacred relationships paradigm, from diseases and divisiveness for humanity to health and harmony and diversity for humanity, from destruction and exploitation of the planet to regeneration and caretaking of the planet, from violence and cruelty to animals to kindness and compassion for animals, from an egocentric culture of consumerism to an ecocentric culture of accountability, from a mindset of scarcity to a mindset of generosity, and from a profit-driven economy to a service-driven economy. And I claim that the game of money, as it is constructed, with the rules that we have set up, automatically make us do everything on the left-hand side of this transformation. And therefore, we have to create a new game of Aquarius, a new game of money, in which we automatically do everything on the right-hand side of this. And it's not that complicated to create this game. Okay, so we can play this, we can actually create this game and start playing it in parallel with the current money game. And over time, just transition to the new one. So there's a simple way to do this transformation. And that's what we are beginning to do. And this is my granddaughter who inspires me, who has tasked me with this job of creating a vegan world by 2026. And she thanks you very much.